Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora koutou, kua tai mai nei mō tēnei hui. Ke mihi tātou mō te wā. Me whakanui te wā mō te reo Māori. Kei te tautoko tēnei kaupapa, te kaupapa te wiki o te reo Māori. He mihi tuatai ki te kaunihera, kai kaunihera, tēnā ko, tēnā koutou. He mihi ki I a mātou hō mahi, tēnā koutou. Nō reira, me karakia timatanga. He honore, he karore ki te atua, he mongaronga ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Aia nei, aki nei. Nō reira, e pā ai tō mātou I te rangi. Whakapainia mātou I tēnei rā, me nā kaupapa kei mua I a mātou I tēnei rā, I runga I te ingoa o Ihu Karaiti. Amen. Welcome everybody. He rangi a tāhua. Okay, we've got an apology from Councillor Foster. I'll move. Moved by Councillor Cranston, second by Councillor Seymour. All those in favour? Against? Any declarations of interest? Okay, confirmation of the minutes from 6th of August. Any matters arising? Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Burdett and seconded by Councillor Sheldrake. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Action sheet, page 14. We had a couple of presentations last time. We just wondered what the follow-up was for those. Follow up on the presentations from the last operations meeting. We had the Stout Street and the disabled parking.
So Stout Street's petition, Dave Hetfield spoke to them immediately after the hui, and that is in train. Yeah. The disabled parking is already in train with the parking team. They've done a financial analysis and they were doing that independent of the submission.
Thanks, Heather. Anything else from the action sheet? Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we ask that there be a report back to this committee on what is happening with the Stout Street one for the next meeting, please? Because I've been asked by the people that presented for a follow-up. Yep. And I've also been approached because of the publicity around that for traffic calming in Sponge Bay Road, and the circumstances in that are rather different. So I'll just mention that now so that it gets recorded, and maybe I can speak to Mr. Wilson at morning tea time, because we need some guidance about what will be required, since much of Sponge Bay Road is rural, but there is a large number of high-speed activity, for want of a better word, and they take out the fence and they'll potentially take out someone walking on the road. So we need to, traffic calming has been asked for there as well, and I have been with the residents and had a look.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem from way back, but it's getting more important now because there's so much more residential there. Yep.
Through the chair, if I just may, Stout Street and Sponge Bay, the traffic calming measures that are there are matters that will be done through the Regional Land Transport Committee, because there are things that have been done through the speed management bylaw and the speed management review that we're looking at in the urban area. So just conscious around keeping the committees to the kaupapa that they have. So one of the ones for us, the speed management bylaw has been done through there, and that's where those things will be put through RTC, because the Regional Land Transport Plan changes that we'll be putting back up. You'll see those when they come back through that committee, and also when they're discussed through the long-term planning process.
Supplementary then, that would be really helpful advice, Mr. Wilson, especially since the manager that's been nurturing or working to that committee isn't going to be there anymore. So the chairman has not been provided with any clear direction. So we need to have a conversation about that.
Happy to take that offline with you, Councillor Seymour.
Thank you. Nothing more on the action sheet. We're having a look at the governance work plan for next month.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of things on the July, September agenda and that relate to the district licensing committee, and they're both repeated. The same thing is repeated twice. And that committee reported to the operations committee yesterday, to finance yesterday. So I'm not sure whether anybody actually audits what they write, because I don't think there needs to be any reference to the public financial report, income and expenditure related to the operations of the district licensing committee. And then further down, Alcohol Regulatory Authority annual report and public financial report, which goes to ALA, are both on that page for this meeting, and they are not in the agenda and were on the agenda yesterday.
Through the chair, that's because the agenda was done prior to these being moved across and put into the Finance and Performance Committee. So they were transferred out of this committee and over to the appropriate committee. The governance work plan just hadn't been updated.
Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. Are we expecting a MAR update in every operations meeting? Just, I said, it's in today's and in next agenda.
Through the chair, my understanding is that we're getting the MAR updates as we're getting to the detailed end of that project around the injections and where things are. So it's reporting back some of the milestones and changes that we'll start to see as that progress, because of the stage of where that project is at the moment.
Thank you. I don't see the endeavour in this coming up. When is that likely to be on our work plan?
Through the chair, my understanding is that's coming to a council meeting.
Do you have something? Heather?
We have a hearings in our operations meeting, and then it goes for decision to a council meeting.
There you go. Yeah, just in time. Just timed it perfectly. Tēnā koutou, kia tai mai nei, mō tēnei hui. Kaupapa whakahira here. Good to hear. Welcome to Aotearoa. We have just been delivered with a bit of the kaupapa about this, so we're going to, looking forward to hearing from you what you've got to say. So, welcome.
E tūhau ki te kororo ki te mihi ki a koutou, mō tō koutou tanga ki au. Me te rōpū e tautoko nei, o reira tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Pukitapu me Hukirangi tapu maunga, ko Waipawa me Waiapu taku awa, ko Horota me Taki Tumu nā waka, ko Ngāti Parau me Runga Whakata, ko Te Aotearangi Nepia Clan Pahau. No reira tēnā koutou katoa. A little bit tired this morning. I went to the presentation of some wonderful young women last night up at Te Poho Rawiri who are running for government. Councillor Akuhata Brown was there, along with 5 others, and it was just a fantastic evening. Councillor Pat Seymour was there, and it was just wonderful to see people acknowledging each other in a really positive way, and 6 really strong Māori wahine, you know, standing up to represent us. So I just wanted to mention that, but that wasn't the reason I was tired. When I got home, I thought a lot about what had been said, and I put this little PowerPoint presentation together for you. So I'm going to start with the treaty. I'm sure that you've all been through this before, but just for the sake of going through it again, let's do it. So Tiriti o Waitangi, it forms the basis of relationships, partnerships. I'm sure you've read all of that. The goodwill and good faith, entering into a partnership. Where's the clicker? So the background to the carvings, you may be interested to know, is that in 1993 I was commissioned to do these particular carvings. The kaupapa was that they were going to go over the doorways leading into and out of the old council chambers. And so the carvings were meant to be pare or lintels to go over the doorways, of course. And so they were completed, blessed and delivered to GDC, where they were installed and remained until the old council building was demolished. At that time, of course, they were removed. So the consultation to create the carvings, I consulted with late Uncle Apirana Mahuika, who was the chairman of the Ngāti Pro Runanganui, I'm sure you all know that, the late John Ruru, and Stan Pardo, chairmen of the Turunanga Turanganui Kiwa at that time, and Stan, thankfully, is here today with us. So the theme that was agreed on was the coming of the kumara. This theme allowed for ngā iwi of the Tairāwhiti to be recognised in terms of acknowledging our whakapapa, our tūpuna ancestors, their mana as the tangata whenua of this land, waterway, sea, our waka, and many sacred stories and sites. The carvings are an example of our traditional art while acknowledging our treaty partnership through GDC kaitiakitanga responsibilities. So, kaitiakitanga, what does it mean? So the instant that GDC took custody of these carvings, they accepted the kaitiaki responsibilities for these tonga. Being a kaitiaki implicitly implies a duty of care for tonga trusted into that care, ensuring that the mauri or life force, wairua and physical tonga are healthy, strong and respected. So then we start talking about tikanga, because they are all rules that we follow as Māori. So tikanga Māori is an authoritative correct Māori ways of doing things, as they were done in the past, as they are done in the present, and as they should be done. These carvings were commissioned for a specific purpose, to be lintels, either end of the corridor to council chambers. In terms of tikanga and kaitiakitanga, there was an expectation that these tonga would be treated with respect by being removed from the old council with appropriate tikanga karakia, then reinstated in the new council with appropriate tikanga karakia, therefore fulfilling the purpose of why these tonga were created and respecting the relationship, partnership that they represent. So, as I mentioned, they went into storage. Since being removed from the old council building, these tonga have been in storage. It was Councillor Pat Seymour, thank you, Pat, that asked for the whereabouts of the carvings. Soon after I learnt this, I also inquired where the carvings were. I had been wondering, but I had just thought council will do the right thing. And so I was taken to the carvings, which were lying face up on the floor of the Botanical Gardens workshop. This was very disappointing, as the duty of care for these tonga had not been honoured or respected, in my view. So we talk about respect. Respect is a basic requirement for any relationship. Mutual respect breeds trust, trust breeds confidence that the right and proper steps will be taken to protect relationships. So I ask you as councillors to do the right thing for these tonga. They're a tangible representation of our relationship, partnership under Te Riti o Waitangi. So I was actually hoping for these carvings to be standing up so that I could point to them and talk to their, talk to what they represent. But luckily we have a slide of them standing. And just a little indication of how innovative we can be. I was looking for a pointer this morning and I saw an old aerial in my garage. And voila. Oh, that's, yeah, how do we do that? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. A little bit flashier than mine. Only slightly though. So here we have Hene Hakirirangi. If you make reference to your pieces of paper there, you will see that Hene Hakirirangi was a very powerful and important person in terms of the particular roles that she played. She is well known as being on the Horota canoe, of being the kaitiaki of the kumara. And the theme of the kumara is a theme that covers all of our region. So Hene Hakirirangi, being on the Horota, obviously connected to Ngāti Porou and Tūranganui Kiwa. So her job was to protect the kumara, to be the kaitiaki, and to, when people were exiting the waka, being on the waka for the voyage, they were under tapu. So to remove that tapu, they had to exit between her legs to make them whakanoa, to remove that tapu so that they could live ordinary lives. So here we have Hene Hakirirangi standing on the bulwarks of Ngā Waka, and that's why it was important that she was above the door of the council as people came in and went out. So you came in and you go into your discussions under tapu. And when you leave, she has that role of making you whakanoa, of making you ordinary again, not higher beings as you are now. So that was her role. And she was also well known as being a planter of kumara in the various gardens that we have around this region. So all of these, around the outside, we've got the takarangi, which is a representation of Rangi and Papa, the Earth Mother and Sky Father. We have tangata na wahine o te tai rāwhiti, represented around here in the form of abstract faces and manaya forms, top and bottom, to represent all of the people of the tai rāwhiti. So there we have the stories there. And right down the bottom, you can see that Hini Hakirirangi is selected as an appropriate theme for the council buildings, as this is where the ideas are planted, nourished and harvested. Whether these ideas develop or not is entirely dependent on how they are treated and their development similar to the practices incorporated in gardening. So let me tell you, it's no easy task when you're given a kaupapa like this by your tupuna, by your elders, and it's your job to have that represented in a way that takes care of our tikanga, takes care of acknowledging the things that we want represented in our form of traditional writing and telling stories, and being quite proud about who we are, where we come from and what we represent. So Paurangahua, you can see Paurangahua there. Paurangahua went back to Hawaii to get some kumara tubers, and he asked his uncle, because he wanted to get home quickly, he asked his uncle Ruakapanga for one of his birds, and his uncle loaned him a bird so that he could return to Aotearoa fairly swiftly. And in loaning them the bird, he told Ruakapanga not to fly over Mount Hukurangi and not to pull out any feathers out to make the bird go down. Ruakapanga ignored this advice from his uncle, much to his dismay, to the uncle's dismay. He did fly over Mount Hukurangi, and you can see over here, Mount Hukurangi represented, and the taniwha that he was trying to avoid on Mount Hukurangi with his hand reaching up and grabbing hold of the wing. Tamai Waho is the name of the taniwha on Mount Hukurangi, and that's him there. So here we have a representation of Ngāti Porou, and of course their sacred maunga. Well, our sacred maunga, I'm part of Ngāti Porou also. On the other side, Paurangahua was told not to pull out any feathers, but he got impatient for the bird to go down, so he pulled out a feather and as an indication that he wanted him to go down, and that feather floated down onto what we now know as aerial reef, Tuka Huru. And according to the story, Makodi grew from that feather, Makodi trees, and later a pet shark, Mahaki Rau, went and carried one of these branches back, and they planted it on land, and that became the great Makodi forest of Tiakanga Mahaki. We see all of the fish on Toka Huru, on aerial reef, and the fish relate to the plentiful and bountiful harvest of the sea, but also they relate to a whakatauaki of Ngāti Maru, whakatauaki that was spoken by one of our tupuna, Taharako. And you'll see above here also, you can't see them very well, but in the slide, but there's stars. So Taharako had been known to say, e tini whetu ki te rangi, ko Ngāti Maru ki te whenua, ko tini kahawai ki te moana, ko Ngāti Maru ki uta. Meaning, as many stars as there are in the sky, so too are Ngāti Maru on the ground. As many kahawai in the ocean, so too are Ngāti Maru. So all of these things are encapsulated as well as representing the people of the Tai Rāwhiti. So essentially, that's the story of Hini Hakirirangi and Paurangahua under the theme of the coming of the kumara, representing our people of the Tairawhiti, representing our relationship, representing our partnership, and representing a tangible representation of how that is displayed in terms of Te Riti o Waitangi. So I'd like to thank all of you, Councillor.
E tangi ana sama ki te kai mana wai ho me tiki ake ki te pau aho kai hei a mai te paka ke ki utara he wai u mo tamaki a ho mai e tō tipuna e u e nuku whakarongo ko te kumara ko pari nui te rā ka iki mata te tapua o tangaroa ka whai mata te tapua o tangaroa ka haruru ka nohoru ka noho ia ngana puta mai ki wahora ko te atu ko te ahore ko hine tuahua ko tangaroa ko te whatua pautingi te kukune tanga mai i Hawaii ki ko te Hawaii ko Maui whare ki no ka no Japani ka kawe aki te wai o Monariki maone unga maone re ma te piere ma te matata te piatangi parau ka hoa ke ki rungara ko te pipi wharauroa nā whena koe waho e tuatahi e waho e tuarua ka tope ai reira ko te whatanui ko te whataro ko te tiha ere nā kohuru nā pai aki nā turi watu nā rākei ora ko wai hoana ke te tangata te renoa i te ahirara arongo maraero ko te kākahu no tū ko te rangi kaupapa ko te tātua riro mai a kano i a matua tonga tenei te mana waka puriti tenei te mana waka tāwhi ki a hara mai tōna hokoviti i te araka ki a rua tapu e uenu i te tama mea ka tahuri te huri pūreia ka whakakauta mai ai whakarere iho ana te kakau o te hoe ko manini tua ko manini aro ka tangi te kura ka tangi wiwini ka tangi te kura ka tangi wawana ko hakiri rangi kāu ki uta ko te kohai ka ngāra ka ringitia teke te ko manawaru ko ārai te uru ka ki te ā e te tini e te mano ko makauri ana mahu e atu i waho i toka āuru ko te pekainere mai ki utara hei kura mō mahaki ko mana mō te kou e tānguru ko te koi korongora pua wai ho me tikia i te kumara iarangi ko peke hawani ka noho iare ko ruhi te rangi ka tau kei roro te ngahuru tiko tiko i e ko poutu te rangi te mātahi o te tau te putunga o te nue tama.
Tēnā koutou mō tō koutou it was a beautiful rendition of Pōpō that told the whole story. So I know you all understood every word, so there was actually no reason for me to give this presentation because it was all in there. So, Councillor Cranston, Chairman, tēnā koe mo tō karanga ki au, me tōku nei, te haere mai, e te kororo kia tātou, kia rātou, no reira, tēnā koutou katoa. I'd just like to ask if any of our rōpū would like to say something.
I just want 5 hours of you. Kia ora tātou. I take the opportunity, me kōrero Māori au, me kōrero Pākehā, me kōrero Haina Mana, me kōrero Harai. Engari, no te mea kei te mohio te pio, tēnā koe pio, te harikaro o te kaingane. Me te mohio tonu atu, te nuinga o koutou. Tēnā koe, te tumuaki o tēnei kura. I take the opportunity to grab a situation like that, this, for you people to learn a little bit. Back in 1974, that's not so long ago, David Simmons led a group of us to the bottom of the Auckland Museum. We went in there and we saw some beautiful carvings, beautiful carvings. What were they doing? Gathering dust. Huge disappointment to us that here were some valuable taonga just on a concrete floor gathering dust. So when I heard about this, please don't let these taonga gather dust. There's a huge amount of kōrero for all of us wrapped up in this town. Okay, it's number 1. Lesson 1. Lesson 2, when I look at taonga, they should be standing up looking back at me so I can talk to those taonga. Okay. On life's rough stream, you launched us forth. Your thought to buoy us gave us hope. Your sturdy oak, our flax and bark. Your ironclad, our humble reed, made sorry company, and you glided well equipped, though whilst we trembled, Apiranangata. A long poem. But we have moved on since then. Hopefully, there's a lot more room for us to move. These are treasures to us, huge treasures, not just to us, to all of us. So kia taha tātou ki te tiaki i a tātou taonga. We need to preserve the taonga that belongs to all of us. Kia ora koe te rangatira. And I look at these taonga, if I'm lying down, I may as well be in a box. Okay? But when I'm standing up, I'm looking at people and I can talk to those people. So please, do not lie our tongue down. Okay? Please stand our tongue up so that we can talk to them. Tata kota, I'm talking about all of us. My coho has finished for the day. Kia ora tata.
May I just take 1 minute? I just want to express the spiritual aspect of the taonga and our relationship with each other, no matter where you come from, no matter what walk of life, no matter what creed or color, the spirit in these taonga keeps us connected every moment, every day, every week, every month, every year. Keeps us connected with the spirit world, although many have gone on every time you hear my voice through the karanga, you know that I'm calling them back. They are in our midst, they are hearing us today, and they want us to be happy and live in peace in this country. And I just leave it with you. Thank you.
Just a short comment there that back in 1993, when Api, the late Api Mawega and John Ruru, their word relationship was what the hell does relationship mean? We're now getting together as iwi groups, iwi collectives say, like an Olympic, we had to talk to the Gisborne District Council. We sent our Rockville and Willie Te Hao to pave the way. You all know how Willie did things. You remember that, Pat, from those days. But I just ask on behalf of those colleagues of mine there that our intent was good. The relationship has really developed over the years. Continue with that relationship that was forged back in 1993. And you will find an appropriate place. And as Tanya has definitely said, then you stand the taonga so we can come and we can mihi to them. We can also tassel. Thank you for your time. That's this morning.
Te mauri ora. Whare a tāhua tēnā koe. Te rōpū e huri mai nei. Tēnei rā, a whanungu ngā hoa, tēnā koutou. Ko rā pōwhu tōku ingoa, a.k.a. Papalau. Ko hau he te maiti no Ngāti Porou. E moko puna nā te rau hui a taiaka, te tōkana o ngā tōmu whakairo ina taiaka rau honi. So this whakapapa of mine gives me no choice but to tautoko my friend of many years, Tatarangi. We first met in the mid-80s and we reconnected in Rarotonga. I was in Rarotonga with the Pacific Arts Festival, the Toi Māori contingent over there, videoing the activities of the Toi Māori committees. One of the highlights of that festival was a fleet of waka that arrived at Rarotonga. The last waka came from Aotearoa. His name was Teodere. I'm out there on the end of this reef, up to my knees in water, panning in on this waka. Heka ma, Tatarangi clamp on the steering hoy. Our Mutual Admiration Society has continued for 35 years. And I was thrilled to hear in 93 about this commission because of my whakapapa and interest in whakairo. I became privy to the amount of research he did because the take was a big one. It's very hard to include all the iwi in this area, I tell you. To get a kaupapa that embraces everybody, to tauwhi everybody, very hard, tairāwhiti. But he achieved that. And the paper, I think you've all got a copy of the results of that research. And we see over here, and my concern is the same as everybody else's, because I went with last Monday down to the workshop to put a TLC, put a ball on these taonga down there, but I just felt so sorry. And the big question in my mind, why they are not here? I don't understand. The other thing is that why wasn't Tatarangi consulted about whatever decisions had been made, if any? So those are those questions that I leave with you. I just hope that you will see these taonga as added value to this wonderful new policy you fellows have about racism. It can be a flagship for that policy of yours. But thank you for your indulgence. And well done, everyone. You did yourself proud.
Tēnā koutou te kupu nei. Tēnā koutou mō tō Koutou tautoko ki Tonga nei. So, Mayor Schultz, tēnā koe Josh, Deputy Councillors, I can look around the table. I know most of you. I know most of you, Bill, from old Debbie, Tony. I know all of you. And yeah, Shannon. So look, thank you for your time this morning. I have actually identified where I think the carving should be placed. Porangahua above this door here, and leading into the council, the corridor leading into the council, Hini Hakirirangi, so she can fulfill the purpose that she was created. I don't know anything about this building, but I do hear rumours that the walls won't take the weight. I don't know, it's not my problem. It's your problem. What I do know is that walls can be strengthened. I know that. So I'll leave that up to you to decide in your wisdom, keeping in mind what these tonga represent and keeping in mind what is on the slide of respect.
Tēnā koutou, nā mihi mō te kōrero, hei kōrero whakahira. Te atarangi, hei whakaro ātāhua, hei whakaro whakahira. Nā te mea, kei te wiki te reo Māori, I'd like to defer to Councillor Whārehenga so he can give it the mana it deserves in the reo. I cannot be there.
Tēnā koe te rangatira. He ahu atu reiti tēnei, engari me mihi katika. Nei rāti mihi nunui ki a koe te korokoro tuatahi, te korokoro tui, te kaikara no te ropu nei, te maere kura, nemi koini, te rangatira i roto i te ao Māori, i raro i te maru o tēnei wiki whakahirahira, te wiki o te reo Māori, me tēnei mārama whakahirahira, te mārama māhuru Māori, nei rāti mihi nunui ki a koe te maere kura. Ka tukuna atu te mihi hoki ki a koe te rangatira e papataina. Te pautoko pana o tātou rōpū hauora, hauora tai rāwhiti, nei rāti mihi nunui ki a koe hoki, te rangatira e pāpāteina, ki atu ki a koe e pāparau, e tino taku mihi atu ki a koe, mō tō tautoko i roto i ngā hāpuri o te tai rāwhiti, ngā hāpuri o Ngāti Porou nui tonu, me te hāpuri o Puhi Kaiti, he mihi atu ki a koe. Ki a kōrua, ngā tokorua paraongi me ki, ki oku nei whanaunga. Tēnei te mihi nunui ki a kōrua, hoki atu rā ki a koe e tēnā, ngā mihi nunui ki a koe, haramai, tautoko tēnei, kaupapa whakahirahira. Ki a koe papasti, tētahi pau o te runanga o tūranga nui a kiwa, tētahi pau o ngai tāwhiri, tētahi pau o rongo whakaata, nei rati mihi nunui ki a koe te rangati. Ai he tautoko tō kōrero e te atu. Tini whetu ki te rangi, a Ngāti Maru ki raro, a tini kahawai ki te moana a Ngāti Maru ki ura. Mai tēnei uri o Ngāti Maru, ki a koe te rangatira o tō tātou marae, a pāhau, te marae a Ngāti Maru, nei rati mihi nunui ki a koe mō tō kōrero, i wainganui a tātou i tēnei rā, me o taonga i tukuna mai kia mātou o te kaunihera. Nei rati mihi nunui ki a koe, tēnā koe mō tō whakamārama, e pāna ki o whakairo, e pāna ki o tātou whakairo. Nei rati mihi nunui ki a koutou. Ki te tika te mihi ki ngā tini mate i wainganui a tātou i tēnei rā, i tērā rā, ki ngā maha ngā mate i wainganui i tēnei rā. Ke te mihi ki a rātou, oki atu ki a rātou. Engari tātou te hunga ora tēnā rā tātou katoa. Tino whakahirahira tēnei, mā mātou e whakatika. Mā mātou e whakatika e ngā whanaunga. Heoi, Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
E karere ki te rao,
Piti hono tātai ho ngā huna mate ki ngā huna. Piti hono tātai ho ngā huna ora ki te huna ora. Ai, mā koutou e kōrero, mā mātou e whakatika. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Just by way of process, a presentation, we do have to offer the councillors a chance to question the presentations. It's not a debate, it's just, is anyone, Councillor Seymour?
You don't want it to be a debate.
No.
I
Councillor Seymour.
wanted to acknowledge, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It isn't a question, but I just want to acknowledge Te Aotearangi and each and every one of you have come today, because it has been an issue for a long time that the carvings have not reappeared in this council chamber. So I want to thank you for bringing the first of them back to us, and these very significant ones. And thank you for the story that actually we didn't know, albeit we walked beneath them so many times. So that was a very opportune conversation that we have had, Te Aotearangi. Thank you very much for bringing them back to us today. Kia
Councillor
ora.
Wharehi.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, rau e tō kōrero. Beautiful, beautiful kōrero. I was kind of thinking in my head, we're going on this journey of what induction looks like for councillors, right? And you know, I'm hearing this kōrero, seeing this kōrero going, man, you know, the kōrero hitori, te kōrero o mua of, you know, these things and of buildings and et cetera, should be part of that. One of those things that tie these kaupapa together is the kumara. And Pōpō discusses how important the kumara is in Te Ao Māori. But just for the wider understanding, I guess, of the wider table, are you able to just maybe give a little paku kōrero about how important the kumara was for the East Coast?
Who's the kumara expert?
I'll just start while they're thinking about it. The kumara was just so important to us. sustain us. When you hear the words of Popo, it talks about the kumara, about the coming of the kumara, about the whakapapa of the kumara. Haramaya Pawa, again, it talks about the kumara and how important the kumara was in terms of sustaining life. So it is, you know, we have a saying that the kumara doesn't speak of its own sweetness. That is an example of how highly we regard the kumara. When Pauranga Hua came over on the great bird of Ruakapanga, he brought with him two digging sticks. Those digging sticks were named. You go into your shed at home and you pull out your shovel or your spade or any tool in your shed, they don't have names. The only names you will give them is a pliers or a spade or a shovel. They had names, and the reason they had names is because they had mana. And the reason they had mana was because with that mana, they were going to sustain the people. So the kit here that the kumara seeds came in, they had names for exactly the same reason. They all had mauri. This is what you've got to understand. Mauri, the life force. This building is just a building. It's a shell. We have to put the mauri into it. Sure, it's nice, but it's just a shell. Like a house becoming a home. This building has to become a home for all of us. And this is the story, and this is the reason that we bring this kaupapa here today. We shouldn't even have to be here. The right thing should have been done with these carvings. But here we are here today, and I think we're all learning from each other.
Kia ora. I'll just add a little bit more to that. Class has started again. Okay, so here we are. We live in our world of Te Ao Tangata, that's us. And when we live in this world, we will not survive very well if we don't have babies. Okay? So we have our babies. And before our baby, at the time when our babies come off the wayu, and they start feeding the solids. So we go to pene the kumara, mash the kumara. And in with that kumara, we mash puha. And in with that puha and kumara, we mash kina. But don't
Is this a
mash
secret-
your peanut
secret
these
recipe?
days in there. Bring it to Tyler's house. But it's very important because of those sort of links about mother feeding the tamaiti. Okay? Absolutely important for us that the link between mother and tamaiti is nurtured and nurtured and nurtured. And that is one way that the kumara nurtures us as whānau. Okay? And so we grow up a bit further, and hello, the East Coast Māori starting to get a bit clever. So around Wharepunga, you know where Wharepunga is? Oi! So in Wharepunga's history, we plant kumara. And we have our own waka, we plant kumara. And in the days that Auckland was developing and developing and developing, we dig our kumara, put it in our waka, and transport our kumara to Auckland. That's life for us. But on the way, we call in at a place called Harataunga. And we start establishing connections with those iwi. And those connections are still there. How was those connections formed? By the kumara. So I always use that link. Kaore te kumara e kōrero mo tōna mangaro. I don't like hare te kumara e kōrero mō tōna reka. That's too simple. Hare te kumara e kōrero mō tōna māngaro. Because if you use that, there's that intonation of patience in that kōrero. You wait, and you wait until the kumara is ripe. When the kumara is ripe, it loses its whiteness and it turns into yellow. Ka ngaro te mā o te kumara and it turns into yellow. And that is the time, the proper time to eat kumara. So when I see people eating white kumara, I walk away because I know it's not sweet.
Those are some very good stories. People of our generation in particular, that was the biggest crop we grew. Biggest crop we grew in our little kainas. Every family had big gardens, but the kumara was the main crop. To be honest, when I was a kid, I hated kumara. Because after school, you had to come back with a 4-gallon kerosene tin. My grandfather with the sledge and the 44-gallon drum, he would pull up with water and with a little can, watering every bloody kumara plant. I vowed as a kid I would never eat kumara again. But as Taylor said, when you have children, yes, and your mothers and your grandmothers come over, and when they finished on the milk, go to the solids, it was the kumara, was the main part there. But no, the kumara is a wonderful plant and it means so much there. Hini ha kiri rangi. And our whare out at Whakatoa. And it's like all of our whares there. It's so important for all of us there. We all come from women. And that's why a lot of us have this reverence for women. And when you walk through the door, life, women are the source of life. We all come through the legs of a woman. You come in here, the deliberations you make, you'll walk through the legs of a woman and you'll make some good decisions. So they're all combined, wonderful stories. They've been our stories, they're now your stories, all of our stories. We've been pleased to share them with you, but the kumara is a wonderful one. The other thing we're told from my koro, when we did the kumara, no women were involved. Moko, handle the kumara like a baby or a woman, tender fingers. Too hard, go Peter, and your door is destroyed. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. I know there's councillors and that have had questions. I'll just give you a little rundown. We are going to break for tea and we're going to invite our manihiri for a cup of tea. So I'll still allow the questions, but only if they're relevant questions. If there's something we can have in a discussion over tea, then let's have it there because we do have an agenda to get through. Councillor Robinson.
Sorry, I might have to be asked to be excused because I'm supposed to be sitting on a pai at Poroporo Marae that's in Whakatane at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Kia ora koutou. I just want to say, tātarangi i hoa. Thank you for this taonga that you've given us. And to all you folks that come today, I'm sorry you had to come. You thanked us for your time, but no, thank you for your time. We will hopefully do the right thing for this.
Kia ora.
I actually have a question. And it's just in respect that when you're around this governance table, you do learn a lot about iwi politics in respect to the different iwi in our region. And I'll be honest, I was obviously grateful for today to put things right. But I wanted to ask in respect to this building, will there be any need to discuss with other iwi in respect to the carvings? I'm just aware that this building was fashioned by set carvers from the region itself. And I know that's often a tension we are opposed with as governors. So will there be any discussion needing to be had with other iwi in regards to this building and the carvings being reinstated? Will there be a process of that? I'm just asking, do you know of that, or is that up to us now? Kia ora. Well, that's what I'm grateful for, because that's often when we get into a bit of strife. So kia ora.
And to add to that, Selwyn Parata sends his apologies for today. And I'm a trustee of Rongoth Carter, as you know, Rongoth Carter Iwi Trust. But also, you have to remember that we shouldn't even be having this discussion. The carvings were dedicated to the last building. They should have gone into the new building. There was no need for any more consultation, but there was a need for tikanga to be followed. That wasn't followed, and respect has not been given.
Excellent. Let's break for tea. And like I say, Manahiri are welcome to have tea with us. It's actually full. Yeah.
Just remember, ladies first. Ladies first.
And the exit.
Attitude toward council has improved because we're going to a solution straight away and they're going back up. So we'll work with Te Atarangi and yeah, we've already heard from Nadine that the objective is to get them up as soon as possible. So, yep.
I think there's been significant disruption in terms of the building work through Pine Street and that is all, so
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah, well, we'll work on that. Okay, well, I let that roll because it was so interesting and important and everything. And I do note that most of our, well, all of our reports are just noting reports anyway, so we should be able to get through them reasonably quickly. So there's no extraordinary business, no notices of motion, no adjourned business. And we'll go to reports, which the first one is the Potai Avenue to Nelson Road link, page 16. Moved by Councillor Worsnop, seconded by Councillor Seymour. Questions, or did the staff want to give us anything on that? No. Yeah, Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, it's been specifically highlighted in here that the funding for this is coming out of our development contributions. Is that is it regular to identify capital works projects out of that, or is it or is that used for capex and opex projects?
So through the chair, we use the development contributions for capital. So we use it for things like this, where we knew the Tarahiru block needed extra infrastructure done, and it was funded from development contributions across the whole rohi. So it's not the development contributions just from Tarahiru. This is from the full pool that we have. We then apply that to growth projects like this where we need them as those areas develop.
Supplementary then, is there a how much is in that capital works budget each year? And is it, and I'm assuming we get visibility of that work program out of that capital works?
So through the chair, I'd need Pauline to answer around what the budget is per year for it. The development contribution projects are identified through the long-term plan process. So they're in there and they're tagged as funded through development contributions in the LTP.
Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. At 14 on page 18, the project team are planning on-site open days with schools and interested parties, and it sounds like it's going to tender quite soon. So can you tell me when that's going to happen?
The tenders.
No, I mean with the on-site open day, because if we're going to start tendering and now we're talking about it, the public will know.
So through the chair, once we have a tenderer for the road build phase, we will then get together and have that open day. The whole point of the open day is around safety. We recognise the school and the preschool, and you've got the neighbouring schools, they do shortcut through that area. We want to make sure that those kids that walk through there are safe, and the whole idea of the open day is to have them up close to the machines, the guys that are working there, understand what's happening, and then once we start, they know to stay away. So that's the point of the open day.
Fine, I thought it was more about consultation. So
No,
that's
not so much.
fine. And I had a second question on 23. I just couldn't work out from the plan. I wondered if it threw up any more subsections that were going to be available. I mean, I know where it is, I've been there, but it's not immediately clear. And we're talking about a lack of sections to build on. Once this link is put through, does it throw up the ability to half a dozen sections?
It does. The paddock on the left-hand side could easily be subdivided by the owners, yes, going forward, so yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. If we've nothing further, we've had mover and a seconder. Sorry, Councillor Arkwright.
Just point 15, the project encourages walking and cycling. So is there a cycleway going in amongst it as well?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, the footpath that we're putting through there will be wider than normal. Again, we recognise that there's a lot of people cut through that to do the loop around the Lytton Nelson loop and around the park. So we are making the footpath a little bit wider to accommodate, yeah, all modes.
All those in favour? Against, carried. Thanks, Darren. Page 24, we've got the heavy metalling program. We've got Dave Hadfield here. You want to Where did they come from? Okay, moved by councillor Faulkner and second. Yeah, and second by councillor Worsfold. Did you want to?
No, I'll just take the
as
report
read.
as read if that's fine. I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Councillor Biddy.
After consistently asking that something happen to Racecourse Road, which takes us to our water supply, over the last 4 to 5 years, has it not been considered? It's just been part of the council area that has been left, nothing done. And that road needs building up because in the winter time, there's probably 6 or 8 inches of water lies there most of the winter. It's not a big...
I don't mind it. Yeah, just through the chair, the emphasis of this program was to assist heavy freight, and we've tried, and that was the main driver. Maybe that's something we can pick in our BAU program, and probably just for clarity for the councils, what we are making sure we're targeting the trip spend and the PGF spend is the main emphasis. In our BAU program, we're going to keep in that last 6 months. So that's potentially something we can look at that
Yeah,
stage.
thank you, because the metal's just over the fence. Crushed metal.
All right, thank you. I don't see any. Councillor Faulkner.
No, it was really just a comment that I wanted to make through you, the chair, just to really acknowledge the sheer amount of work that's happened within this team over the last 6 months. It's been phenomenal, and I know and I hear the message behind Coomera not speaking of their sweetness, but I think in this situation we need to acknowledge just the sheer amount of mahi that's gone into getting through this. So my congratulations to you, Dave, and Dave, for your hard work and your team.
Thanks for that. Councillor Wilson.
I just want to second that. I'm super excited to see what the roads look like by the end of the summer.
All right, it's been moved by councillor. Yes, your worship.
Make one comment. I know we talk here about fixing up our roads and work that's been delayed for quite some time, but we cannot address that without also addressing the fact that so many people are now in jobs because of this funding. I've had the opportunity to visit quite a few of those sites. I even had the stop go sign, hard hat, everything. And the stories I have heard was just of the young gentlemen and ladies who now have employment, the skills that they have gained through this. So it's a two-pronged win for us, where we get our roads done up, which is much needed, but we also see young people in employment and leaving that employment, hopefully to have permanent employment there or somewhere else, but also leaving with skills. So I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge that as well.
Good point. Councillor Singh.
No, thank you. No, just a query, and I'm through into the actual heavy metalling report. And you pick up things when you know them, what it relates to. And I just wondered, it talks about, it said page 38, in the previous week. So it says it established Waimoko, but it doesn't say what it did in the current week or when it finished it. And they've been well gone. So, I mean, how legit is this report if we really read the detail of it? So some, they write when they set up and they write when they finish sometimes. But, it just says established and it doesn't say anything's happening. And the up and coming week, it doesn't even say it's finished. Well, in actual fact, they've been gone for weeks. So, I mean,
So
what's it telling us?
Through the chair, that was just a snapshot of what our weekly reports say. So that was the one for the week ending the 16th of August. It's not an ongoing. This was just around, this is the sort of reporting that we're getting through from our contractors as an example of how they let us know where they are. And so this is a snapshot of one contractor. We've got a number of them across the network.
Thank you.
Councillor Harker-Brown.
Thank you. I just want to ask a question about the roading itself, because I got the chance to spend a day with Downer and talk to a contractor who talked about one of the key issues with our metal, obviously after heavy traffic goes up and it spreads it across. He talked about cementing or a work project that's, because we've seen potholes get filled and then unfilled and then filled again. So just that kind of continuity of maintenance. Is there a lot more work being done to stabilise, the fixing of the metal? Because Because obviously people notice when the workload has been done and then say, oh gosh, after this next load of trucks or heavy traffic come through, how stable will it be? There's, the kind of the anxiety, if you like, or concerns. But I just heard this from one of the contractors. That was his job. He would lay down this kind of this product that would kind of help cement the metal to the road. Is that part of what the contract's doing, or is it just simply mettling away and then getting it settled in by traffic, etc.?
Yeah, there's a combination of that work. So what we're trying to do is, in some places, there's actually enough metal on the roads, and so what we're doing is adding a little bit of lime, also depending on the conditions. That just adds a bit of strength to it, and so we don't have to bring as much metal in. So, but fundamental before you even do that, before they're doing that, they're actually having to fix up the drainage as we go along, which is. And we can talk about the cement and the maintenance and all that, but if the drainage isn't right, you're pouring on metal and it could just go into filling up culverts again. So it's a combination of the whole package.
Just because I know that roading is going to be a constant speak to this region. We're challenged because of the geology, all of that. Is it getting better? Like, are we able to maintain them better now because of what we know? Or is it just going to be a fiscal ongoing? We're getting better in our rating space for the forestry industry, etc. Are we getting better at this roading technology for the next future users?
Through the chair, I think I'll answer that. So what we have here is a huge shot in the arm that our region needed into our roads. Our roads will continually need maintenance, and they will always be something that we will be fighting to keep up with. Part of the new roading contracts that we'll be looking to, and happy to talk to that when we get to that phase with the council, will be around the methodology that we use to maintain our roads. But it's a very long game, and even the significant investment we've had, this is still a $1.6 billion network that we're maintaining. So it's still 100 Ks of 1900 Ks. So there's still a lot of work out there on the network to do.
All right, thank you. Been moved by Councillor Faulkner and seconded by Councillor Wilsnop. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Page 44, status report of the land transport business case.
Just once again, I'll take the report as read and wanting to take any questions if there are any.
Councillor Wilsnop.
So my question was on page 46 on the district route security. Just noticing joyfully that the Tineroda Road has made it to the top of that priority list. Just wondering if 860,000 is sufficient to deal with what I envisage is probably that giant bluff. Is that correct? Is that the target of most of that money, and does it actually give us a long-term solution, or is that a bit of a catch up and let us keep continuing for a little while?
Yes, it was just the first phase and included a lot of, we went historically through a lot of RFSs, and most of the work was actually trees that were coming onto the network. Okay, so some of that's been, and so what the agency have come back and said, we understand now that you've cut a lot of trees, make sure those are taken out of your benefit cost. Your program business case, and the next set of projects go up. So they just want clarity. The bluffs were included, but that was the first thing, and a lot of drainage works as well.
Okay. So just to clarify there, it's a two-stage approach. So the first part was around the other resilience issues that we have on Tineroda Road. The bluffs have to be designed before we're able to get any funding for that. So yes, the bluffs are a very big ongoing issue for us. The funding that we have to date is for the engineering work needed to be undertaken to then unlock funding to be able to do the physical work. So the bluffs are on a different timescale, but given the other resilience issues on Tineroda Road, we've done those, and that's part of that 860.
Councillor Faulkner.
Yeah, so my question is just around on page 48, the risks. With the provincial growth funding likely to be reallocated back into the main fund, do we run the risk of not gaining it back? Is that, are we likely to lose it?
So through the chair, that's in discussion around Harper and Kings Road. That is one that we are unable to do. So that money is going to go back into the wider fund, and it's not necessarily targeted for region, but the project is not where it needs to be for us to be able to do the work. So we've put our hand up and said it's a longer time frame than what they have, so it has to go back.
If I could just add supplementary, the funders are saying if council makes the decision one way or the other, and we're not, they've already made it predetermined that they don't want to go one route, then that would save quite a bit of money on the business case. So, and that will come back with the heavy freight routes discussion.
At the top of the page, policy and planning. The business cases will influence the development of the next regional land transport program. I thought the threshold for us in terms of the application was $2 million. Correct me if I'm wrong. How does this fit in there?
So those for new projects, so this was already included in this existing RLTP. So that's already, so we're allowed to carry those over, but if there's any new projects, absolutely, then we've got to do the business case.
Do we, supplementary, Mr. Chairman, do we have many that we've carried over?
No, not many, but this is the first, they're saying with the PGF, this is certainly the first bit of work that we'll hopefully be able to carry over into the next RLTP.
Thank you.
From my other questions actually, but respect to all the funding we've got this shot in our arm, has that relayed back to national government how much this region needs? Like, are we going to have to keep vying, even though they've seen the significant help we've had through PGF? What's the end game for us? Are we just going to constantly have to keep submitting for funding when they already know and have seen the workload that is necessary for this region to flourish, thrive, and do well in respect to roading infrastructure? So our end game, we know it's long term to think of the 1.6 you just mentioned before, Dave. But do we have to just keep going back to governments? Do they not get it? We need this significant fund to keep the infrastructure for this region.
So through the chair, these are discussions for our regional land transport plan that we develop in conjunction with Waka Kotahi. That goes up every 3 years where we make our investment case and they look at that and prioritise it against the National Land Transport Fund. So those conversations are ongoing, but that's through the RLTP.
And you feel listened to?
We have a good relationship.
Yeah. All right, looking for mover and seconder.
Yeah.
Moved Councillor Dowsing, second Councillor Wharehenga. Nothing further. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Page 49, District Landfill Review, which we're a lot more familiar with now. Moved by Councillor Seymour. Second. Good on you.
I have got a big question mark now, and at first need to see what I wrote here. Oh yes, we all went to the Awatere landfill, and I note here unbudgeted emergency works were completed. Do we know the quantum of the money that we spent there and where it is coming from?
So through you, Chair, the final funding invoices are sitting with us now. We will be coming to council for unbudgeted expenditure, so we will have to borrow to pay back for what we've had to spend to date for that. It's on the vicinity of around $500,000 to $600,000 has been spent across both landfills so far.
Yeah. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. This report and I think the next report I found very interesting. This one, though, I did have a couple of questions, which were, you've created a risk assessment matrix to be reviewed by staff and for future plannings and budget. What direction have you got from council in terms of our intention around these landfills? And is that, being a noting report, there isn't a lot of opportunity for us to input into that direction here, which is part of our role, I believe.
So through the chair, the correct process for that is through the LTP and the WMMP, so your waste management and minimisation plan. Those are coming up through the long-term planning cycle, and we didn't want to do those in isolation from the wider waste policy planning that needs to be happening over the coming months with you. So this was the noting report that was asked for by this committee around where the landfills are and where we're at. When it comes to the policy for development for these landfills coming forward, that will be coming to council for you to be able to feed into at that stage.
The next part, a little bugbear is the language we use, and I don't like seeing historic landfill. They're simply closed landfills. they can be historic when they're gone, but they're not, except for perhaps the one at Waipiro, was it, that's been washed away in the report? So is there any more information on the effect of that? And then when will we see the risk matrix? Because a lot of these are on high energy beachfront and riverside locations. There's a lot of risk. And I assume that's going to be during this LTP waste discussion.
Through the chair, the Waipiro Bay one, there's no data for that around the effects from that. That was done without any monitoring, so we don't have the data for that. When it comes to for the landfill prioritisation, as I said, that's through the planning process that we have coming forward.
Just a question for me, Dave. Stepping down the ladder, is there any transfer stations that are risky to the environment?
So through the chair, the transfer stations are on top, and a lot of them are hard stand where we have catchment, they have consents to be operating where they are. The one that's most at risk is obviously Tokomaru Bay, given its proximity to the water and the flood levels that are going through there. But those are conversations that we need to have with you as we go through the WMMP and the LTP cycle around what's proposed as in sites and as in operations for those going forward as well.
Councillor Seymour?
Thanks very much, because the photographic information is really interesting. But the one on page 59, which calls Tiaroa now rehabilitated as a playground, well, I don't think that's quite right. Isn't that where we went the other day? And for everyone who went the other day, it is really interesting to see how much has changed and how far the river's cut in. But it's not a playground, is it?
Sorry, through you, Chair, that this has been taken from an old report. So no, it's definitely not a playground now, as we saw the other day. It's hard stand.
And supplementary, because it helps everybody to understand what we're looking at. Where the whole photograph is in solid yellow, one assumes that that is the landfill, and there's a yellow line around the outside. Can you just tell us what the difference is between the solid yellow and obviously which looked like a bit of green vegetation, which isn't there anymore?
So through the chair, a number of these old sites, we know where the footprint was from those. So if you remember the other day when we were in Te Araroa, we talked about the fact that we've just gone through to have a look at what's underneath the ground to make sure we know exactly where those footprints are. With a lot of these sites like Te Araroa, that open face moved around within that yellow footprint quite a bit, depending on where things were being dumped and just how the landfill evolved over time, shall we say. So there was no real tracking of where it was within that footprint. We know it's within that footprint, and that's where that 3D imaging that's coming back will show us exactly where things are as we get that and how deep it is as well.
Thanks very much. It was really interesting and helpful to actually go and see it as it is now, and for all the work that was put into tidying it up. Thank you.
Councillor Biddy, microphone.
We had the good fortune of visiting both the Waiapi landfill and going to the former Te Araroa rubbish dump. Keke Pohatu it is known, and in that picture on 52 you'll see how it was before Dave got cracking with his staff and the contractors. There's a note on 14 acknowledging that. I just want to, and I've said it before, it was amazing how quickly they got on the job, and we had a engineer there monitoring it all the way through, plus the other staff, council people that were out there on the beach picking up all the rubbish. Now, the finished product the councillors saw last Saturday with the rock revertment, and Dave explained to us exactly what they've done. As he said earlier, the costs will come to us shortly. But that's an example really of how well prepared we are when you've got the right people in charge to make the repair work happen.
Thanks, Councillor Biddy. Councillor Dowson.
Thank you. Sorry, just one supplementary, which was if we've identified our highest risk location, are we doing any planning around how we would secure that currently, considering it's unlikely we'll have a strategy for everything adopted before the next heavy weather event? I feel like it should be progressing in advance.
Through the chair, the two highest ones, in my team's opinion, is the Tokomaru Bay and Te Araroa. So we have those armoured now. As we explained the other day, they're armoured to withstand an event, but not every event. So we have an ongoing risk. However, that has been mitigated somewhat by the design and what we've put in place infrastructure-wise. Part of the prioritisation going forward is obviously a conversation around Te Araroa landfill and what we're going to do there, because with climate change, sea level rise, and the number of basically big northeasterlies that we will get into there with no sandbar in front, we're going to need to decide what an ongoing strategy is for that area and working with the community up there around their aspirations for it as well. But those are the two biggest risks from my team's perspective.
Councillor Sheldrake.
Just on that, Dave, what's the sort of time frame for this consultation? And, you know, realistically for you, what do you reckon?
So through the chair, we have just received back the monitoring data that we've taken from the sampling upstream and downstream, which we'll be going back to the community to talk through, and then working around the different options that there are available, and they would like that to be definitely fed into the long-term planning process and around what their aspirations for that are. But part of that is looking at what are the physical things that we can and can't do. Part of that has been waiting for that test results to come back to look at what sort of quantum is underneath the ground there and what are the options feasibly and what's actually feasible to do there. So we're waiting for those to come back, and then we'll be meeting back with the community again, I'd say within the coming weeks, to discuss that with them, but not in the detail, but around starting, this is what the data's telling us is under the ground, this is what we're seeing from our test results and our sampling, what do we now want to do with those options?
Councillor Faulkner, then Councillor Akahata-Brown.
Just at a high level, Dave, on the map on page 62, the contaminated sites and hazardous activities. What are you looking for under all those dots?
So inside that one there, that's a lot of the hazardous activities. So some of those could well be sheep dips, right through to old landfills, right through to contaminated sites. There might have been lead works, there might have been a whole range of activities underneath a contaminated site. So contaminated sites can range from a landfill right through to a dry cleaners may have been there back in the 70s or 80s. Still doesn't mean it's not contaminated. There's contamination there. So that's the one of all of the contaminated sites across the Rohe that we have registered at the moment.
We had a couple of people come in and talk about mining landfills, waste to energy. I was going to ask it for the next report, but I just wondered, David, if you've had any comeback in respect to those interested in turning waste to energy in respect to landfills particularly though, in the discussions you've been having.
So through the chair, an old landfill like this is very difficult to put forward for waste to energy, and particularly one at Te Araroa. We're looking at what's in that landfill and getting a better understanding, but it's not really the volumes that we'd need for waste to energy. So it's been quickly looked at, but dismissed by the team around options. However, there's always options, economy of scale things we'd have to look into, but that's part of that wider work that we need to undertake with the team.
Councillor Robinson.
Thanks. So Dave, did I understand you to say that within a few weeks you'll have the information back with the test results and your analysis of what's below the surface to have a corridor with the people up there? Will you put some report to us as soon as you've got that as well, please?
Through the chair, so as Councillor Robinson's just said, we'll have the data back within the coming weeks for us to take to the community. We'll make that publicly available. We'll send it through to you, but we'd like to have a conversation with that community first about their space before we really set out to the wider communities, but we'll make sure that you get that copy of that report as well.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Seymour and seconded by Councillor Burdett. Nothing further. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Next one we've got is the Waste Manifesto update. We've got Laird here. Welcome, Laird. To take it a read, or do you want to allude us to anything first?
Good morning. We'll take it as read, but this follows on from the conversations that we were having just recently regarding the LTP and moving forward. So happy to receive any questions.
Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. Happy to move the paper and have a couple of questions on it. First of all, what are we doing towards these goals that are listed in here currently in region? The goals being removal of difficult waste, standardization. Sorry, I'll bring it up. The manifesto has a set of goals. So phase out difficult to recycle plastics, initiate standardized collection of household rubbish. I know that these are the manifesto's goals, but some of them are clearly identified around agrochemical collection. Sorry, I should have brought up my page before I went into it.
65.
Yeah. So yeah, just really wondering what we're doing in region currently to meet some of these goals.
Through the chair, in regards to sort of where we're at with these goals, often I'm just referring to the National Waste Data Framework, the phasing out of recyclable plastics. This is held at a central government level, but we continue to feed in as part of that through both waste mins and through our territorial authority meetings as well, and we submit as part of that. In regards to the priority products, agrochemicals, e-waste, tyres, these have all been identified, and we're working through different ways of trying to deal with this through the Environment Centre and also through our curbside contract of waste management.
Okay, so we don't currently have e-waste collection, do we, in region?
There was one previously. It was set up as a 1-week program, and what we're looking to do now is do another 1-week program, but also then have it moving forward on a continuous basis.
Okay. And then around, I guess for the discussion in the future, it's around our leadership role in region and trying to work with our in-region producers and users of waste and trying to take a leadership role on converting some of those producers into utilising new materials. But I look forward to the future discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thanks. Lead, can you just, sorry I'm sounding a bit dumb on this one, can you just give us a bit of an overview of where we're at with our waste minimisation strategy? We've had lots of korero around this table about waste to energy and people looking at this, looking at that, but to me, in my mind, it's all over the show, and I don't have a good grasp of timeframes and a plan or a strategy. So are we still to meet and make a strategy, or is there a strategy document ongoing? What balls are in the air? Because it feels like there's a lot of balls in the air. I might have missed it, but maybe I haven't.
So the WMP is from 2018 through to 2024. That sets out the steps that we want to take in regards to waste minimisation in region. We are working to, as part of the 33 aims that we set as part of that plan, we are working with our main contractors, the Environment Centre and community groups to achieve that, as well as the bigger ticket items such as organics and the potential of waste energy as well.
Supplementary question, with the clear change in China's soil policy and the really quickly changing landscape with recyclables, do we need to review that strategy because we're now mid-term of it?
Through the chair, yes, we do. Part of the things that we have for our WMP is the waste landscape has moved significantly in the last 18 months, particularly some of the new requirements coming out from the Ministry for the Environment, the changes in the container deposit legislation going forward, the changes in the waste disposal levy and funding. So there is definitely some things that we're going to have to look back as a territorial authority as to how we're going to manage those new expectations, but then also around the opportunities that arise from those things as well.
So supplementary to that would be who determines the pathway for that review process, and is it a subcommittee that would be formed? What body within council looks after that, please?
So this would be, so through the chair, this will be something that will come back through probably, it'll go through sustainable tairāwhiti to then come back through around, here's the WMP, this is the changes in legislation, and this is what we would like to develop up as part of that in response to it. A lot of these things, we're working very closely with the other TLAs because we all have the same issues, so we're all trying not to reinvent the wheel on a lot of the stuff that we're doing here. However, you do know and are aware, as we talked about the other day, there are aspirations on the coast for community recycling centres on the coast, resource recovery parks, those things. Those are the things that we need to have conversations around with yourselves as to decide how, or if and how those things should be put into a long-term plan or the WMMP going forward.
Thanks, Dave. I've had a move at Councillor Dowsing, haven't had a second. Second to Councillor Whatihinga. Nothing further? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Makauri Aquifer Recharge 82. Dr. Card here. Welcome. Where'd that come from? You want us to take it as read, or you want to allude us to anything? Okay, we're going to take that as read. Sorry? It's been moved and seconded. Yeah. All right, enough. I don't need a 12. Councillor Worsnop. Moved by Councillor Dowsing, second by Councillor Seymour. Councillor Worsnop.
Thank you. I just have a question. I know that we're on track to exceed the injection for the previous year, but I'm pretty sure that our target injection was like double or more the previous year injection. So we're, is my understanding correct that we're still quite a long way below what we'd hoped to do?
There is some confusion over the amount of water that we're allowed to put in by our consent. So our consent allowed us to put 365,000 cubic meters in, which from one injection bore is impossible. So in 2017, they injected 73,000 cubes. Last year we did about 39, and this year, as of today, we're at about 80,000, and we're hoping to get to the 100,000 mark if we need about another 17 days of good weather to do that.
Supplementary to that, is that enough to instill confidence, I suppose, in the committee with the findings of the report?
So trying to answer the question as to what is a substantial amount of water to be able to answer those questions is a difficult question, but over the last 3 years, we'll have put close to 200,000 in. A modelling study in 2016-17 said that to fully address the declining aquifer and also to account for some further expansion of irrigation, we would need to inject about 600,000 per year. So, you know, having put about 200,000 in, that's a really good amount that we can look at all the data and make a really good informed decision about whether more is the correct solution for the declining aquifer.
Councillor Seymour, then Councillor Dowsing, then Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. And I'm aware that there's a meeting of the subcommittee and the external people early in October. So there'll be a further updated report to that meeting, won't there?
As part of that meeting, there will be a report, yes, for an update.
Great. Thank you very much. No, it's good to see the project is still moving along. Thank you.
Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. So if we're aiming for around 100,000 in the previous 12-month cycle, pending weather conditions, considering what we may see with climate change and more extremes and drier summers, are we expecting to have 6, 10, 12 kind of injection bores required to get to that 600,000 per annum?
So we have been doing a feasibility study based on the 3 years of data that we have, and it will be part of the update I gave to the subcommittee and also to Sustainable Tairāwhiti on the 22nd of October. But from our data, it's between 5 and 7 bores that we need. And it's It's not on a 12-month basis because we really need to take the water in winter. So we're limited to about a window of about 155 days per year when we can inject. And currently we're injecting on about 50% of those days, between 46 and 50% of those days because of rain events that make the river too turbid to inject from.
Councillor Robinson.
Paragraph 6 of the report, it says the year-to-date spending is $10,278. I've got a couple of questions. Can you tell me how that spending is made up, and does that include the cost of actually injecting, so the power supply, et cetera, et cetera?
That cost includes everything from the power supply, so the power for all the electrics that run the headworks and the river pump, and also for all the water quality testing that we do.
Is page 85 of paragraph 18. You are proposing to hire a consultant for an independent review. Two-part question: who sets the terms of the review? And the second question was in relation to the next row, which is hire consultant to undertake iwi and stakeholder engagement. I would have thought we'd have the capacity in-house to undertake iwi and stakeholder engagement without having to hire another consultant.
To answer the first question, the consultant for the scientific data, is that what? So the terms of review are pretty much set by the Australian guidelines for MAR, so which we adhere to and that we're sticking to. So they will be using those Australian guidelines for the guideline for their review. So we do obviously have in-house capability to do iwi engagement, but there is a history of iwi always having or there being issues historically between council and iwi. So we thought maybe if we could get an independent person who would, independent iwi engagement consultant who would be independent of council, that they may more readily engage with that person than if it was a council kind of run iwi engagement.
Did I see your hand? Yes, your worship. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Card, for this. This is obviously technical, telling us, what we've put in, what we're getting out, what the readings, the scientific readings are. As a council, soonish in the next while, we would need to start talking about allocations and regulations, the bigger, higher part of this. Do you have any idea? I know this stops at the end of December, this trial, and I am acutely aware of this. I'm part of those other discussions. Do you have a rough timeline of when those types of decisions need to be made, or do you see that there might be more trials needed before we get there?
I think from all the data we've seen so far that scientifically, it would probably be giving a green light. And then once you've got past that barrier, then there are big hurdles around a governance model for the MAR scheme, and then also around what an allocation scheme would look like. And trying to put a timeline on how long that would take to negotiate and to get all the parties together is a bit difficult to do. We were hoping to get some of the iwi engagement finished off by the end of January next year, but we are having some difficulty locating somebody to do that.
Thank you for that. It's not straightforward.
Councillor Robinson.
You spoke about the governance model for this, if it were rolled out en masse. Has there been a report prepared as to how that might look like, what that might look like, and will that be in the 27th of October paper?
So through the chair, that is a longer timeframe than the 27th of October timeframe. There's a number of issues that we'd need to discuss with you around the different models that have been proposed by a number of parties, governance structures, pricing structures, allocations, and those things. So it's not a small discussion. It would not be ready by October.
All right, if there's nothing further, I have had a mover and a seconder. You've got that? Yep. Moved and seconded, yeah. All those in favour? Against, carried. And last one is our Te Rāwhiti redeployment program update, which is 86.
Through the chair, can I suggest you have a short break while we get Glenys here, please?
All right, yep. Excuse me. Hey. Glenys Philip Barbara was going to give the presentation, but she's not available, so Dave's going to take the dot.
So thank you. So this is to update you of some of the things that you don't see because of where the work's happening across the Rohi. So you've seen some of the rollout on the physical works, but this is around some of the probably things we're more proud of than the physical works. And that's been around, as the Mayor alluded to, the number of people that we've had employed to date. So we're at 184 people that we've managed to take off MSD's books and put into work programs with our contractors across the district. So it's not just roading. Roading's one part of it. There's the Project Kaitiaki, where we've had a number of staff helping out Andrew White in his area across Titharangi and across a whole range of his projects that he runs through with rec services as well. So it's been a really big process for us to get a lot of people going through. The 184 people employed has come from a massive number of people who have also been interviewed, working through different skills and qualifications. So if you remember back in March 2020, we were able to successfully get 23.7 mil out of the government around worker redeployment. A lot of that was our Tai Rāwhiti economic support package. And the key thing to differentiate is this is not about how many trees Andrew can plant or how many roads we can fix. This is around getting people into work and getting them employed for a 3 to 6 month period. And a lot of that is getting people who haven't been in training, haven't been in work, getting them out, giving them new skills, new qualifications, and also career pathways. One of the things we're really proud about is the number of people who have been able to get into employment as part of this as well. Some annoying person steering roadworks. All good, my friend. So a lot of it has been around where we get everybody. I'm just at the background, Glenn, so I'll flick through. So as we said, a lot of this was about sustainable employment and around making career pathways for people. So it's not about the physical works. And I'll hand over to my...
Kia ora. Kōrena rā, tēnā koutou. Kia ora rā, Dave. Yes, so really pleased to share with you today that our updated number of redeployed workers as at today is 208. So we are just 12 off our goal, thanks in a huge part to the stellar work that Oriana down the back there has been doing, recruiting people into her program. They've got a fresh batch of 21 starting very, very soon. So we're inching ever closer to the goal. But as Dave says, this program is about opportunity for Tai Rāwhiti people to get into work, to learn new skills, to understand what it is to work in roading, to work in hazardous tree removal, to work in line clearance, to work on the whenua, and we're seeing all kinds of growth as a consequence of people's participation in the program. I think one of my favourite memories is seeing a particularly young and rambunctious man out on the road with a arborist crew being jollied about by older men out in the field in the funniest and most hilarious way. But to see that young man absolutely giving as good as he got, doing the work, being trusted to feed those little spindly willows into the chipper. I mean, they're tiny little moments, but they mean so much to the people on the program. Our comms lead, Dinah Dobson, has been out talking to everybody in the program since it began. And she told me just this morning that the overwhelming sense that she gets from everyone she interviews is just how grateful people are to be working, to have an opportunity to be able to put food on the table, but to be learning new skills. So that's really been the focus. Long-term sustainable employment is our overarching goal, but look, we wouldn't be getting there without the absolute support of local Te Rāwhiti businesses and the stellar, absolutely stellar pastoral care provided by Tūranga Araro. So they've got a crack team that we call the aunties, who spend time out in the work sites, getting to know the crews, helping people solve the kinds of problems that aunties help you solve, getting my bank account sorted, getting my ride to work sorted, getting my life a little bit sorted for some, you know, actually thinking about what the future holds. So they are also supporting us with the cascading of people into their next best opportunity. And for some, they want to continue where they are. They love chopping trees. They love being on the roads, but for others, they're interested in exploring other avenues. And Tūranga Araro are very well placed to help bridge people. And as you would all know, there's a whole lot of jobs here in Te Rāwhiti at the moment. And so they really are sport for choice at the moment in terms of what their next step looks like. So getting these good people who have had training, skills, development, all of that invested in them, they're ticketed up to their eyeballs. Most of them have got TC, STMS, they can work safely on the road. Others have got Grow Safe. So they're all ticketed and ready to go, and they're out there gaining skills. Who's running my web sheet? Oh, you've got it. Oh, excellent. So just in terms of the numbers, and we call it the good oil because we wanted to show you just how things are tracking. And with my announcement this morning, you can see that things move quickly in a week in this program, particularly in the recruitment space. So you can see the 5 projects, and as at the 9th of September, we had 184, but today 208. We've had people leave, of course. This is what happens in a program with lots of people in it. But of those people, 38 have gone on to long-term full-time employment, having had the opportunity to build relationships, make those connections, and follow their noses to something even better than our part-time offering. We've got 17 local businesses involved who are hosting redeployed workers. And out of those, you can see the numbers. This is all the training and development that is ongoing. So even today, all of those numbers will be different because this is a constantly evolving piece. So people just aren't out there working. They are also being certified as part and parcel of their experience. And of course, the very last one, which is a labour of love, eh, Dave? Hundreds of tonnes of free firewood delivered to those in need. So what's happened here is that the hazardous trees being removed, rather than having them chipped, Dave and the team have ensured that they can be chopped into firewood that can be utilised by homes. We're partnering with over a dozen local community groups, including Age Concern and Supergrands and others, and they will make sure that the wood is delivered to families in need. So that's just another element that's part and parcel of this program. So trying to make the most out of the resources that we have and adding that benefit to the community.
Question on that one?
Yes.
At what stage would you identify them as moved to long-term employment? So you've got 38 up there that you identify as long-term employment?
So it's a permanent job.
Yeah.
That's how we're...
All of them?
So the 38 are all in permanent jobs.
Yeah. At what stage of their training would you say, well...
So it varies hugely.
As soon as they've been offered a job.
Yes,
On a permanent basis.
Once they're offered a permanent job,
So
that's
your,
how we're measuring it.
your perception of how that 38 will go up to the 200.
Not sure. It's a
Yeah.
real mixed bag. Some people are ready. Some people whose employment was affected by COVID-19 already had a long career of being continuously employed, others not so much. So it's a real mixed bag.
Yeah.
But if we're on trend, we'll be looking pretty good by the end of the program.
Cool.
Sorry, I should have asked if there are any other questions. Okay, cool.
Just to tell you, that we did see one of those sites in the final.
Oh, good. Yeah.
We didn't have our trailers.
Don't know if you'd meet the age concern criteria. And I tell you what, for the young people working on those processing sites, knowing that the efforts that they put in are going to go out to help families in need just really puts a bit of a spring in their step as well. So this is the breakdown, so you can see all of the different projects, how many full-time equivalent workers will be redeployed into those projects, and just how we were tracking FTEs against target. So as of today, we're 12 off, and that's kind of 12 who we're looking for across trees and kaitiaki, but very small numbers now. So like any good thing, it takes lots of us holding hands to make it work. And in this particular project, we've got no shortage of friends. Kia ora.
If we're managing and administering the contract, who is physically paying the wages?
The business is employing the people.
What about when they first get on the training program?
So
I'm just concerned about what we've had to tool up to do. So we're making grants out of the 23 million to the businesses employing them. How does the first bullet point actually manifest itself?
So through the chair, what we've done is for each of the contractors, when they brought them on, as part of their contract, they had to identify how many staff they could take as part of that. We then have worked with them around, they are paying for the training. It's coming out of our funding that we have. So a lot of our expense is around getting those people in. However, they're still working on all of our projects for us. So the funding that we have, as we said, is to get people employed and get people into work. They just happen to be working on our things as well, so our projects. But they take those people on, they put them through their PPE, they buy their PPE, they put them through their drug testing, they put them through their training, and then that gets invoiced back to us as part of our cost for doing the project in the way that we're doing it for this, which is why it's been kept very separate from our BAU work, because it's not obviously how we run BAU.
So just in terms of the size of the team managing the program at council, there are 3 of us. So the lion's share of the money and the cost sits out where the work sits. So funding's come down through MB. It's administered locally by the Provincial Development Unit. The Ministry for Social Development connect us to people, obviously, whose livelihoods and jobs have been affected. Tūrangararo, as I said earlier, provide pastoral care. They've got a team of around 4 or 5. They are contracted by the Ministry of Social Development to do that, and we work through agreement. And interestingly and importantly, they offer the service, but it's up to the candidates who have been redeployed to opt in, right? So everything is on an opt-in basis. And training and development, there's also funding available through MSD, and that's provided to employers if they opt in. So most of that's coming through EIT, but there are a range of other providers who MSD contracts and works with as well. So we thought we'd introduce you to the people so you can get to hear from them directly. This is about midpoint, how they're experiencing the program. Do you want to push play? Is there apparently it's real clever, too clever for me. Oh, it's an embedded video apparently. We might have to push it Is there a, I was told there's a thingy to push play. Onto it. Oh, there you go. There it is. Boom. Onto it. Mr. Coolin. Have we got sound? No sound. Oh, there we go.
One day they'll be able to see that in the market out there, just amazed that there's funding for it all. See people get a lot out of doing this sort of work, you know, fills people with confidence, sense of purpose, and more than anything, I think it's a bit of a patriarchy school here, so I see a lot of benefit from that.
It's only my mana, and it's so special for me to be with them.
Short on Cooper, and I just got a job with barbecue and through the big school program.
In these uncertain times, for us as a council, it is so important to look after our people. We do want to practice Manaaki Ana. And what this redeployment package offers us is the ability to reach out to workers and employers. What it offers our workers with retraining, redeployment, and hopefully we can help them into sustainable employment. And that is what we are.
My name is Tanya Kiwada. Recently, I've been privileged enough to be able to jump on the Untitled Chapter recruitment program. What it's done for me is just opened up an opportunity for me to have a career in health and safety. Kia ora, I'm Brent, and I love my mahi. I love being out here.
And very good for me, team, that gives me the career I want to do.
The redeployment program really has allowed us to generate our workload, and it's given us an opportunity as a business to take on trainees. The course that's run here today, we've had 6 out of there, and they come out of that course with 4 qual. In the workforce would at least take 12 months to get those. So these guys come out with those quals, still very inexperienced, but with those 4 qualifications allows them to go straight off the work site. It's a huge head start.
What's really at the heart of this is people, all kinds of people from all walks of life coming together to create an opportunity for busy whānau. There are lots of businesses here who are looking for people to work, but may not have had an opportunity to meet up with some of these people. So our job is to bring them together, to work collaboratively together to create these opportunities. So looking after people is actually at the heart of everything here. When it comes to trying something new, how people make us feel is everything. It's really important that we are looking after each other and most importantly, looking after our candidates coming through.
I'm grateful to get a job with a kid after losing my job.
I am Tamara and I love being on the redeployment program because I get to gain new skills and qualifications.
Early on, we joined the governance group to do with the Tairāwhiti economic support package. We identified that we had a piece of work through our network tree development program. This program has been a great example, I feel, for how business has worked really well with social development, with MSD and Te Ranga Araro. We've been able to give that support to the candidate early on and onboarding them in with training and candidate support into these roles. We've had such great feedback from the candidates around how this program has enabled to give them confidence.
I'm Woodward. I've been in the construction industry for 20 years. I'm gaining new skills on this and I like learning new things.
Kia ora, my name's Joanna.
My name's Fraser.
It's great to be back in town with our whānau and part of the redeployment program.
My name's Jason. I've got a job here with Alki and I've made a good opportunity for me to get money for my family.
I'm Sandy Farr, I work for Albuquerque Tree Company.
The redeployment program across the Tairāwhiti region has been an amazing opportunity to get rid of hazardous tree problems that have been there for years. It's created an opportunity for us to bring 20 people in to join our existing team. Lots of upskilling opportunities, lots of training opportunities. There's some amazing people out there that we've been able to just pull little gems of potential out, get them with the right people, create mentoring.
The redeployment program has meant that we can cover more areas on our maunga on Titirangi. We can get a lot of planting done with our tamariki. We can plant a lot more trees. We can get a lot more mahi done and cover a lot more areas than we usually would. I would love to employ them all. They've been amazing. They've been a really good addition to our team. They all bring something different to our team, and they're lively, they're hardworking, they're amazing people. Very special. Yeah, very special.
That's us. You need to pass.
Yeah, Councillor Haka.
Thank you so much. It's always nice to see something positive and wonderful and uplifting. There's a little skeptic in me that wants to know. I see a lot of that workload is, and it always bugs me that we have to wait till a pandemic when we get our things in order, and all of a sudden we get stuff done that we talked about decades ago. But is this redeployment space identifying other places and spaces of employment needs? Like I think about elderly care and other kind of growing concerns in region. So are we identifying other employment opportunities through this redeployment? And also are the unemployed being employed, being that we've had an unemployed group of citizens in region for a number of years. So just unpacking the whole sustainable framework moving into the future for our region, because I've just read Grant Robinson's report to the nation around where we are going to be, and the rise of unemployment is one of the key issues posed within this COVID space. So I'm hopeful, and I'm obviously heartened, and I know that we're doing some wonderful things, but what other things can we see in this space?
So Project 5 in this program is focused on workforce development. So it is doing exactly that, identifying the jobs that are available in our community and the time period within which they're coming up. So there is a bit of a focus on the horticulture sector at the moment, because obviously they need lots of people working for them. What we're experiencing, because there's been so much investment in the people on this program, is that we get contacted by employers quite frequently looking for people. So just yesterday, for example, Tūrangararo hosted a group of candidates on our program. They went out to visit Kiwi Lumber and to meet the team out there, and I understand that there's a young man starting this morning as a result of that visit. So it's those practical, that practical approach to pastoral care is about linking people to the next opportunity, but actually all parties also need to have a chance to just check each other out, have a look at the situation, figure out if I'm the right fit for this kind of role. So taking the time to do that with the blessing of business owners who obviously have work to do, it's a fine balance, but we seem to be striking it pretty good so far.
Oh, thank you so much.
Councillor Robinson.
Awesome, Mahi, Glenys. My question is, when the $27 million runs out, and this is a 3 to 6 month deployment program, what is there going forward? Because what you seem to have created is a really effective structure and network, and it would be absolutely criminal if that was to just stop because the putia ran out. And also I want to acknowledge in this space the government support. We're acknowledging you, we're acknowledging the participants, but actually without the $27 million of government support, this wouldn't have happened, and I really want to actually formally acknowledge that.
Yeah, great, and good question. So we are focused on how well we do the transition for each and every person. So each person in this program has a career development plan. So that's part and parcel of that pastoral care offering. So every person gets a conversation, every person has an opportunity to say the things that they're interested in. That skills development pathway is tailored as best as we can, considering where they're working. And then, as I just said earlier, where there's a chance for those meetups for employers to have a look at some of our candidates, or for our candidates to go out and have a look at new places to work, we're making that happen. We are working closely too with Trust Tairāwhiti, so the governance group for this thing, the Mayoral Forum, includes a whole range of community leaders, including Trust Tairāwhiti. So we are working quite closely with them, obviously, because they're looking after the TEEP and we're thinking about, you know, where can these people go next?
Councillor Faring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in addition to what Councillor Robinson was saying, really want to take my hat off to the staff as well for having such a really good project that was able to be demonstrate something that was able to be kicked off really, really quickly, because that's where the confidence comes from, right? So yeah, I absolutely want to take my hat off to the staff, and then also to those others like yourself, Dennis, that have managed to manaki this taonga on its way. And on that note, Mr. Chair, as we're already, I'm happy to move this update report.
Thank you. Councillor Seymour.
Thanks very much for being part of the answer. My question was going to be what is going to happen to these people after 6 months, because it's fantastic for the work that they've done. But 38 permanent positions, and I can't remember the number of part-time ones, is not a lot out of 208. And we don't want them dropped out of a program and going back to whatever they were in environment that they potentially were in before. So it is really important that something is managed, hopefully, and potentially further funding as was alluded to. So are you able to comment any further on that?
Yes.
First, and I've got a second question.
So the majority of the 220, well, we haven't quite hit the 220 yet, so we're at 208. But the vast majority of that 208 continue to be employed within the program. As people come to the end of their contracted time, about a month out, that's when we start making those introductions to new pathways, and those visits, like the one I explained earlier, start to occur. Sometimes people do that kind of work in groups. Sometimes it's just purely introducing somebody to their next employer or their next potential employer, and they go through that traditional interview process.
Thank you. My other question was, and I had raised that with management before, along with Tirangi Maunga here, the headland between Okatui and Turi and Makarori needs some weed control and work on it. And it was suggested that that group may be able to go there. That's council reserve used by the public. And so has any thought been to transferring some of that people that are working on Tirangi over to do a small amount of work on the headland between Okatui and Makarori? Not come to your attention, obviously.
No, it's a BAU matter, so I generally wait to be advised.
Right, and we need to be cognizant of the tremendous work that this is happening, and then weed control is going to go on being needed on Tirangi for years, so we need to hope that somebody is going to employ those.
The group is also working on, you know, gardens amenities right across the city. Just on that day, we could actually catch up with that crew on Titirangi to interview. We did capture that video on a single day. You can see it was the misty, foggy day. So we just had to go with those people who were within our reach on that day.
Thank you.
Before I come back to Councillor Fulton, I think Andrew might have something to say on that.
Yeah, through the chair. So the 70 people working in the Kaitiaki project, a lot of them are actually working across the portfolio, as Glenys said. So I think, as I've said to you before, Councillor Seymour, there is potential there for the Okatui headland to be included in that. And also around the ongoing thing, I know that Ngāti Onioni has its ongoing program with fire as well, where it's bringing on people through the hapu rather than through council's program to continue with that employment on Titirangi too. So that gives a little bit more longevity, I suppose, to the opportunity that's out there for people.
Thanks, Andrew.
Can I just supplement you that, because that is fantastic, but we've had public money given to that headland, and the Okatui Makarori headland in the past, and it would be a shame if we just allow it to become weird and haven't had an opportunity to do anything about it. So I want to hear some more than just the future on the
Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you. Amazing program. Congratulations to all involved. My question's around employers or indeed programs across the region that are only just now becoming aware of the potential of this program. Yeah, I'm thinking in terms, and it might be a question for Mr. White, and around the East Coast Forestry Project, planting willows and poplars maybe, some of the erosion control sort of situations where you haven't got just one job with one employer, but you've got a more wide-ranging project that in the interests of the region. I'm just not sure whether is there a place for that? Is that BAU or is that something slightly different or?
Feels a bit BAU to me. I mean, I literally were handed the projects to be getting going on, so that's my kind of remit.
So if I can, because we're involved from the start, and Andrew, if I miss anything, jump in. So when the opportunity came available, this was around redeploying people fast, and these were the opportunities that we were able to identify as council to get people straight into work because we had a need and working through things that we had on our books. If there's funding going forward to the future, we look across the whole portfolio of council to see where there are future opportunities, but there is no commitment to ongoing past this. As Glenys has said, there's a number of opportunities we're working on at across the region, and Hort is the next cab off the rank for obvious reasons. So part of it for us is around, we took the ones that we knew that we could support, and we had the resourcing and ability to throw people at quickly to get them into employment.
Councillor Worsnop.
Yeah, I'll just add my 2 cents worth of congratulations for the initiative, whoever came up with it and said, give us the money, we can use it right now, and then has actually gone on to do it, which is impressive. I guess my comment is that the thing that jumps out at me from this is not so much that we are being successful in getting work done, it's largely being driven by the fact that we are giving businesses essentially guaranteed demand, which is giving them confidence to employ people that they might have been iffy about before, right? So it's actually the wraparound bit that is the game changer. And you can, if we get that right and we get it sorted, we can transfer that to areas of our community where the demand exists already and we know it exists. Meredith mentioned one of them, horticulture is obviously another. Are we able to sustain it without government funding, the wraparound part, even assuming that private business provides its own drivers economically?
Through the chair, and a lot of this has to do with the ongoing certainty around work program and workflow for our contractors. So this was around, we've got a big package of works that we need to roll out in the next 6 months. However, if you look at the council spend for the next 2 years, you can see that there's an ongoing need. So this is an add-on to the PGF increased spend that we already had and the increased work program that council was already putting out across its books. This dovetails into the community meetings that we have with our contractors every 6 months, where we go through, this is the work program, this is what you've got coming up. A lot of that's given them certainty. They know that end of December, we have a massive load of work finished. But as Dave Hadfield said, we also have another lot that starts again once we get back in January. So it's the certainty, and creating that certainty is what helps the contractors to be able to take people on. This program's been amazing at supercharging that by getting people and forcing them to make connections. Remember, part of your procurement strategy that you've now adopted is around local economic development, and a lot of that is how they have to show that they're investing back into the community. And we've seen an absolute step change in our contractors now, not just saying, oh, I sponsor this, but I've taken on this cadet, they're being put through these things. And those are the things that we're able to see as part of our ongoing investment into our community through that.
I think just to add to that too, the other game changer in this space has been the provision of pastoral care and that wraparound service for people who, for whatever reason, had lost their confidence in employment. So MSD's funding that currently, and from what I can see, there's an appetite to continue to do that. How that gets modelled up though, so that it can be delivered successfully in this region, that will be something for further contemplation as we come to the end of the program, I think.
Councillor Burdett.
Good on council for getting involved in this. And compliments and congratulations to Glenys and her band of administrators and those businesses that have stepped up to take on people permanently. I've always been a bit of a skeptic with these make work programs. this is probably the most positive one I've heard about. And there's the opportunity, if the funding comes at the end of it, to widen the scope in terms of job opportunities. But yeah, no, it's all positive stuff. And when you think about it, it's district-wide. You've got sound, solid people administrating the whole thing. I've actually experienced, I watched that program for the wood in Te Puia developed, and they're storing it in the council's yard there. There's, I think, 8 young people there, all the latest ModCon gear. Man, have they got into it. The trees are coming from not only stuff on the side of the road, but in paddocks, there's microcarpus, there's all sorts of, but it's very successful at this stage in my view. And I just hope the end of it, that there's a chance to widen the scope.
Councillor Dowsey.
Thank you. I wanted to touch on Kerry's question a little further in the commentary from David, which was around procurement policy. I think this identifies a really unique area which we haven't specified, but potentially should, and it's around mandating opportunities in our procurement and specifically around employment. And that's the difference here to what is essentially the opposite in our procurement policy at the moment, which says you tell us what you can do. In this case, we've said we need employment and we want you to provide that, and we'll get involved in the pastoral care, and we'll put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And it seems like something that potentially should go further into our procurement policy and further into our business as usual to maintain this opportunity. But it's time for staff to consider how that would fit within our current strategy.
It's definitely something we've seen through the procurement policy rollout around the staff. And so the way that we do it is how many jobs can be created, and how many people will you put in as part of what we're about to spend with you. So we leave that to them. Then we use it as part of the evaluation period. If someone's only putting up 1 person, someone else says, hey, I've got the opportunity to take on 5 people because of the way my business is structured, I can do that. Then that obviously helps them when it comes to the evaluation of those. Of course, we have to look at what premium gets added as part of that and where the value for money is, because 5 people may not actually be the best option for us with the budget we have available, for example. But we're definitely seeing the maturity come through from the contractors develop over the last 12 months as they've started to respond to the initial provincial growth funding, but now also our procurement approach as well.
All right, Councillor.
I just want to know how I can share this social media wise as to the stories that have been shared. I know it's on some of our Gisborne District Council, but is there, I've just seen the Arbor Care place, but I mean, for us, we want to celebrate this, we want to share it and promote it, and thank you again for all the work. So is there a key site for this kaupapa, or is it in multiple?
So if you search redeployment program on the Gisborne District Council site, you'll find all of our media there. So all of the stories that have been run in the Gisborne Herald are on there, and they've been hugely supportive of this program in terms of telling the stories of the people coming through. I think we're up to about 26 stories now of local people who have come through this program. So you'll find all of the links to all of the media, and you'll find that video clip too, and please do feel free to share it.
All right, excellent. Well, I've had a mover in Councillor Wharehina. I haven't had a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Burdett. Nothing further? All those in favour? Against? I was trying to stretch it out to lunch. It just fell a little bit short, but not too bad. Well, I knew you all wanted some lunch.